So, I am reading. I read the book called The Illustrated Man, and it's very interesting. It's very odd. It's a lot different than a lot of other books I've read. And then that's just a little quote from Ray Bradbury that I thought kind of summed up the book about how he's writing the book. And it says, I can't read it. It says, don't think. Thinking is the enemy of creativity. It's self-conscious and anything self-conscious is lousy. You can't try to do things. You simply must do things. I think that's what it says. Okay. And then this is just summing up the book saying, The Illustrated Man has 18 science fiction stories. None of the stories really have anything in common except they are all science fiction based. And the stories were all connected by the Illustrated Man, a man whose body is covered in tattoos that were placed there by a woman from the future. Each one of these tattoos bring to life a different story. And every time you look at his tattoos, because he warns the narrator in the very beginning of the book not to look at his tattoos because it will start a story. And every time you take your eyes away and look at it again, it starts a whole new story. Or like if he rolls over, or like you see a different tattoo, it's just a whole new story. Next one, please. And these are mostly just like little summaries of each of the stories that I thought were probably like the most the most like futuristic way. Like each one of the stories has like a different future like conclusion. Talks about how a mother and a father's kids are in a nursery that projects their thoughts, and they project their thoughts about an African adult. And it's filled with lions that are very hungry and everything, and the parents threaten to take away the nursery and the automatic house, and the kids don't like that, and the lions come to life and eat them. And then the Kaleidoscope is a group of astronauts that are floating in space from a malfunctioning spaceship that exploded. It's mostly about the astronauts, about how they reflect on their life, and they reflect on their life and how much they wish their life meant and how little it means, and they were hoping. And one of the main guys in there is talking about how he wants his life to mean something to people while he's getting incinerated by the Earth's atmosphere. And the other foot is kind of interesting because this is around the time period when the African Americans really got their rights and everything to be free and to do everything. Well, not really got their rights, but where they weren't. Right, everything wasn't segregated. And the other foot is about a colony on Mars that is mainly African Americans, and they see a rocket full of Caucasian people or white people flying towards their planet, or their colony, so they decide to come up with a plan to make them segregated to show them how it feels. And then when they arrive, the Earth has been destroyed, so they feel bad for them, and they give them homes and stuff, and give them a place to live. And then the highway is about a husband and wife that they're in a world that is on the verge of nuclear war, and they're in Mexico, and then they don't really know what's going on because they don't live in modern day Mexico. So they don't like have news or anything, so they don't know what's going on. And it's about a story that ends up with a young traveler that helps them by telling them what's going on. And then they wonder what the world really is to be. Next please. The Man is a really, really interesting story because it's a story about how they go to this planet and they explore land, and they find an enigmatic visitor came to them. Further description leads the spacemen to believe that his name is Jesus. So they're all excited. They thought that they found Jesus and all this. And a couple people of the crew, one of them goes off to search for him, keeps on chasing him, and the other one dedicates his whole life in worshiping in his faith and his faith and everything. And then the other crew would stay on the planet to learn from the people on that planet. And it turns out that Jesus never left the planet in the first place, or the man, who technically wasn't ever described as Jesus, but that's what they thought he would be. And then The Long Reign. It's about a group of astronauts that are stranded on Venus, and they're looking for a sun dome. And it's a shelter with a large artificial light source. And they just get pounded by rains continually and heavily, and it's very annoying and obnoxious to them. And they scatter across the landscape looking for them, and every single sun dome they came across was destroyed by the Venusians. They're like the tribal people of Venus. And then the characters, one by one, are driven to madness and suicide because of the repetition and everything of the rain. And then the last survivor finally finds the working dome. And I just said these are some of the most interesting stories to me because they show possible events that could lead to death or worse in the future. And I really enjoyed this book because it really intrigued me to think about the future and what could happen or what really is out on this planet. And maybe there was Martians, maybe there was Venusians, maybe, and it really expanded my imagination of what to think about what could happen or what to write about in the future or anything like that. And it just really makes me think of what the future holds.